He laughed at the man's challenge until he discovered he was the bank CEO. Amazing reversal revealed. Dave's hands were greasy and calloused as he tightened a bolt on the stubborn engine before him. The garage's overhead lights flickered in rhythm with his flickering hope. Small-town life had its charms, but dreams were heavy backpacks to carry for a mechanic with a fading client list and bills piled high like unfinished work orders on his desk. The swelling anxiety was less a whisper now, more a shout echoing in his chest. Then, at the local fundraiser, he found himself face to face with a sharply dressed man who dared to question the worth of risk. They exchanged nervous laughter. That simple slap of circumstance, until the man's true identity was revealed. CEO of the bank. Dave's heart sank. Is it worth the effort? The stranger had smirked. Some would say you're just a stubborn mechanic, clinging to a dying dream. Those words replayed in Dave's head, twisting like a wrench inside him. The weight of his father's legacy loomed large. His father, a model of integrity, had poured his life into cars and honesty, instilling a relentless work ethic in Dave. But what was it worth if bills went unpaid and the world moved on without him? The nagging doubt twisted deeper. Back at the garage, reality hit. A notice from the local council lay on the old workbench. They were demolishing his father's workshop for a new development. Rage bubbled inside him at the specter of loss. How could they take this place? The memories, the teachings? As he kicked at the dirt, his foot struck something hard. A battered scrapbook. He brushed the dust off and opened it. Dreams, sketches, ambitions, his father's heart on torn pages. The torn scraps ignited a fire he thought extinguished, yet a wave of pain rushed over him. Each meticulous sketch told a story of hope, the very embodiment of aspirations that once breathed life into his father's spirit and home. Now it felt like a relic, a ghost of what could have been. How could he dare to dream again? Fear clashed with pride. He envisioned the CEO's smirk again, a reminder of where he stood small, invisible. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Taking a deep breath, Dave mulled over accepting the CEO's help. He fought against the instinct to turn inward, yet the notion of relying on someone else felt like betrayal. What did it mean to bring someone into his father's world? A shot of anger surged. How could he risk his father's ideals for a man who saw him as just another project? The CEO, with his polished confidence, wouldn't he understand the essence buried beneath grease and grit? As he stared at those sketches, hope tangled with doubt, and just when he thought he might let the world in, a flicker of resilience ignited. His father's legacy was still alive in his hands, but there was a price to pay. Would he sacrifice his pride to honor that legacy or fight in silence? He stood alone in the debris, the weight of unsettling choices absorbing the air around him, driving him inward, caught between the promise of new beginnings and the darkness of old fears, the foundation of his future teetering on the brink, leaving him ensnared in a tension that had only just begun. The silence in the garage felt oppressive, thick with unspoken thoughts and swirling emotions. Dave clenched the scrapbook, its tattered edges biting into his palms. The contrast between the vibrant sketches of possibilities and the drab, dusty reality of his surroundings was a glaring reminder of the chasm he needed to cross. What had once been inspiration now felt like a burden. Could he truly bring his father's dreams to life while shackled by self-doubt? With a newfound urgency, Dave tossed the scrapbook onto the bench and rushed toward the old chalkboard that stood against the wall, filled with half-completed ideas and neglected aspirations. He grabbed a piece of chalk, the grains of dust swirling in the air as he began to write. Each mark across the board was more than an idea. It was a challenge to himself, a refusal to let the CEO's dismissive words define him. What if he could redesign not just cars but his life? As the words began to flow, new services, partnerships, The possibility of a community workshop, his pulse quickened with each bold stroke. He could see it vividly, a space filled with creativity and camaraderie. But then doubt wormed its way back into the crevices of his mind. What if it flopped? What if, despite his best efforts, it simply wasn't enough? The specter of that CEO's smirk returned, always lingering just at the periphery, a constant reminder of what he had to prove. He paused, staring at the board, and a realization washed over him. The essence of his father's teachings wasn't in avoiding failure, but in striving for something greater than oneself. His father had invested in the lives of others, not just cars. This workshop wouldn't just honor his father's legacy. It could create a space for people to learn, connect, and grow. Wasn't that worth fighting for? Considering how to fund this rebirth, Dave's heart raced. He considered the CEO's earlier offer, the potential access to resources he had scorned moments before. Was accepting help an admission of defeat, or was it a calculated step toward revival? The conflict screamed inside him, testing his resolve. Could he transform this grudging acceptance into something that served his vision rather than merely being a handout? His thoughts began to shift as he mentally mapped out a plan. He would approach the CEO, but not on bended knee. This encounter would be different. He would present a vision, a proposal so compelling that even the most skeptical businessman would sit up and take notice. It would require hard data, emotional appeal, and a strong narrative that evoked his father's passion. Stepping back, he took a deep breath, allowing the flicker of determination to dominate the remnants of his uncertainty. This was about more than just a garage. It was about reclaiming his identity, solidifying his place in the world, and reviving the very legacy that had begun to rust under the weight of fear and doubt. As Dave turned back to the chalkboard, he felt a surge of possibility. The transformation of the garage wouldn't happen overnight, but the plan crystallized before him, urging him forward. He scribbled figures and timelines as the fire of ambition blazed brighter within. Then something caught his eye, a utility bill pinned to the wall, due in mere days. The urgency of action suddenly nodded within him. This wasn't just a deadline. It was a countdown. The stakes had risen, threatening not only his dreams but the very existence of his father's workshop. Barely containing the rising tide of anxiety, he realized the next step wouldn't happen through daydreams or revisions. He needed a meeting, a pitch, a declaration of intent. He thought of the CEO and his disdainful question about worth. How satisfying would it be to demonstrate the worth he himself doubted? Determined, he retrieved his phone. One call could change everything. The connection could lead him out of this self-imposed isolation and toward an unknown future, both terrifying and exhilarating. He steeled himself, knowing full well he was about to challenge everything he believed about success and about himself. As he pressed the buttons, the gravity of his decisions began to settle around him, transforming anxiety into purpose. Whatever else transpired, the path he embarked upon now promised confrontation, and the thrill of possibility loomed just beyond the horizon. Would the CEO be ready for a man who refused to cling to failure any longer? That remained to be seen, but one thing was certain. The moment of truth was coming, and Dave was more than willing to face it head-on. The din of the phone ringing echoed through the garage, each ring amplifying Dave's heartbeat. He didn't have time to second-guess himself. The moment he hesitated, the opportunity could slip away. Finally, just as he felt the flutter of panic clawing at his stomach, a voice laced with practiced confidence answered. "Hello? Hi, Mr. Thompson. This is Dave Redding from Redding Workshops," he said, his own voice startling him with its steadiness. "I'd like to discuss a proposal for a potential partnership." A brief moment of silence followed before the CEO's voice returned, cool and somewhat intrigued. "I remember you. What's your agenda? Can we meet? I have a vision I think you'll find interesting, one that could benefit both of us." His words tumbled out. He could already picture the blank spaces on the chalkboard filling up with ideas, a surge of belief driving him forward where a moment ago, fear had anchored him in place. After a long pause, Thompson agreed. "All right, let's say tomorrow at 10. Be prepared." The line clicked, leaving Dave staring at the now silent phone, a mixture of exhilaration and dread washing over him. Be prepared. The words echoed in his mind like thunder. Somehow, he had done it. He had elevated their conversation from casual dismissiveness to a proposed collaboration. But with this momentum came the weighty expectation to deliver. Would it be enough to pull his ambitious ideas from wishful thinking into tangible reality? He picked up his pencil and started sketching a detailed outline of his proposal. It needed to be precise, balancing the technical aspects of what he wanted to do while highlighting the emotional investment, the legacy of his father. More than once, he found himself stuttering over the words mentally, trying to affix everything into a format that would resonate. The garage ambience shifted with the rising tension. The air felt electric as ideas flowed onto the page triumphantly, but were met with a hostile undertow of doubt. Was he relying too heavily on nostalgia? Would Thompson even care about the history behind the workspace, or was this merely about profit margins? Determination darkened within him, a steely resolve forming. This was no longer just about reviving a legacy. It was about proving that he could carry the weight of his dreams, even if nuances were lost in everything else. His father had faced countless difficulties, yet he wore his experiences like armor. Dave could do the same. As night fell, the shadows in the garage shifted and grew. The ticking clock reminded him that the dawn of tomorrow might usher in a new chapter, but it also coaxed forward his insecurity, a simple belief that every flaw he had, every misstep he feared, could easily unravel all the dreams he was stitching together. He paused, staring at the recent sketches of his workshop proposal, some marked with bright colors of optimism, others shaded with the dark tones of doubt. The juxtaposition of these two realities felt all too familiar, and he realized he was at a crossroads not just with the pitch, but in his journey of self-conviction. He needed to embrace the possibility of failure with the same intensity as he clung to hope. As his pencil danced over the page, he thought about how to present himself not just as a hopeful entrepreneur but as a man emboldened by purpose. Could he speak with conviction about his vision without losing himself in the conversation? The very fabric of his identity depended on this moment. Late into the night, he finally sealed the pages in a folder, the decision crystallizing within him. He would turn vulnerability into strength, shaping potential rejection into motivation. Just as he prepared to extinguish the unyielding overhead lights, illuminating the dim remnants of his father's workshop, one final thought surged through his mind. What was the worst that could happen? He could fail, that was true, but in that failure, there was always a lesson, something to learn, something to build upon. With renewed clarity, Dave drifted into an uneasy sleep, his mind spinning with possibilities. A significant confrontation awaited him in the morning, a chance to face his demons, but also, perhaps, to fulfill his father's aspirations in a way he never imagined. Would he claim his space in this world, or retreat back into self-imposed shadows? Tomorrow would introduce a reckoning. The time had come to face not just the CEO, but also himself. The first rays of dawn seeped through the grimy windows of the garage, illuminating the sketches and notes scattered across the workbench. Dave's body felt heavy, soaked in anxiety and self-doubt, but he refused to submit to the weight. This was the day that could change everything, a day where he would either find his footing or stumble tragically once more. Coffee lingered in the air, providing a familiar comfort as he poured himself a cup. With each sip, he replayed the conversation in his mind, attempting to polish his pitch into a flawless gem. Yet, the closer the meeting drew, the more uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. What if his ideas were too grand? What if he crumbled under the scrutiny of the man sitting across from him? It would be excruciatingly humiliating. Drawing in a deep breath, he found himself running through his notes again, trying to find a solid foundation amid the intricate web of thoughts. His fingers skimmed over the drawings representing innovative workshop designs, both functional and paying homage to his father's craftsmanship, with each sketch representing a fragment of his soul. His father had believed in the power of legacy. Would Thompson recognize that same power in what Dave aspired to create? Hours passed slowly, and he felt the crunch of the clock whispers as each tick brought him closer to his appointment. The commute to the conference room felt endless, each traffic light pausing his cadence. forcing him to wrestle with the impatience bubbling inside. Upon arriving, the stark, sterile office environment suffocated him. Everything was polished, immaculate, and devoid of the warmth his father's workshop embodied. He glanced around, suddenly aware of the sheer magnitude of Thompson's success in the world of entrepreneurship, which made Dave's humble dreams seem all the more fragile. When Thompson entered the room, a wave of authority followed him, a blend of poise and confidence that somehow radiated control. Dave's heart raced as he stood to greet him, extending a hand. "Thank you for meeting with me," he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. "Let us simplify this," Thompson said, gesturing towards the conference table. "Show me what you've got." Something shifted within Dave. This wasn't merely about proving himself or chasing nostalgia. It was about laying down an authentic representation of a vision he had nurtured. He opened the folder, revealing the detailed outline he had so painstakingly crafted. As he spoke, the ideas poured out more fluidly than he anticipated, weaving together the technical aspects with his emotional investment. He painted a picture of the workshop not just as a place of work, but a hub of innovation and creativity, a space where a legacy could blossom anew. Thompson's eyes narrowed, and Dave felt the weight of his scrutiny heavily. "You're proposing a partnership based on sentiment?" "Not just sentiment," Dave countered, taking a calculated breath. "What I want to create honors my father's vision and taps into the emerging trends. There's an opportunity here for both of us, launching a brand that's not just about profit, but community, craftsmanship, and heritage." He felt the words surge from a place in his gut he hadn't anticipated, weaving passion and conviction together seamlessly. "No risk, no reward," Thompson remarked, folding his arms skeptically. "Can you handle the complexities that come with this?" In that moment, all of Dave's lingering fears lurched forward. Was he truly ready to navigate the unpredictable waters of entrepreneurship? His mind flickered to his father's struggles, the vision that paved paths through adversity. It wasn't just about the pitch anymore. It was about confronting what lay ahead with determination. "I can't guarantee success," he admitted, pausing for effect, "but I can promise commitment. I'm ready to fight for this, to learn, to grow." For a moment, time suspended as their gaze locked in a fierce exchange. The seasoned CEO and the fledgling entrepreneur, each measuring the weight of conviction against mistrust. Stillness hung heavy in, the air thick with potential. The silence shattered as Thompson leaned back. "Then we have something to discuss." Dave's breath caught. He had crossed a threshold, but his journey was far from over. Would it be enough to convince Thompson? Uncertain tides of hope and fear twisted in his belly as this new chapter began to unfold. What awaited him beyond this moment? Would it lead to triumph or devastation? The next wave of challenges loomed ahead, marked by the tremors of his own aspirations. Would he secure this partnership, or would self-doubt swallow him whole? The answer paced just beyond the edge of the horizon, an uncertainty that beckoned him forward. Dave felt nearly suspended in time, the weight of Thompson's gaze pinning him to the plush carpet beneath. The room, rigid with the tension of the moment, transformed from a bureaucratic battleground into an unpredictable stage. In that gloriously terrifying instant, he recognized the stakes. Thompson's demeanor shifted slightly, no longer merely the imposing figure but a potential ally, a mentor even. Dave straightened, seizing this unexpected break in the pressure. "Can we schedule a follow-up?" he said, driven by an impulse that screamed urgency. "I have a team of innovative thinkers who can bring this project to life. We can sketch out a roadmap together, and I'll refine the business model with concrete analytics. We just need some seed funding to get started." "Seed funding?" Thompson repeated, allowing a trace of incredulity to slip into his tone. "You truly think I'll fund an emotional cause based on nostalgia?" "It's more than nostalgia," Dave replied, tapping into the relentless fire flickering inside him. He sensed an unspoken challenge lurking in that question, subtly suffocating yet mingling with excitement. "I believe in creating a bridge between the craft of the past and the innovation of tomorrow. People are yearning for authenticity in a world driven by faceless production. A workshop like this can embody that." Thompson nodded, but only slightly, as if to say he was unconvinced yet intrigued. It ignited a flicker of hope in Dave, one he had not allowed himself to feel for years. Was it possible that the fulcrum of belief that shone in his words could indeed tilt the scales in his favor? "Let us talk risk," Thompson said, leaning back, fingers steepled. "How do you plan to solidify this community you're referencing? I don't see an actionable strategy in that pitch for appealing to larger markets. Are you prepared to push boundaries?" A wave of awareness washed over Dave. He was aware of how personal stake always blurred the line between emotional grandstanding and formidable strategy. This wasn't just a moment about launching a career. It was about evolving from a dreamer into a seasoned professional capable of managing the chaos of entrepreneurship. "I'm already preparing a market analysis," he ventured, gathering the pieces in his troubled mind. "Target demographics, competition analysis, and engagement strategies. At its core, this isn't just a workshop. It's a social initiative, a platform for creativity, and a means to showcase craftsmanship. But it requires investment not merely for profit margins but to cultivate a community rooted in shared values." For the first time, he noticed a glimmer of interest in Thompson's eyes. Was this the turning point? Was he capable of wielding both passion and pragmatism? "Consider this," Thompson said, voice tinged with a challenge. "I can't simply pour funds into what feels like sentiment. Show me how this workshop can thrive beyond mere nostalgia." Dave braced for the test. This was not simply about surviving. This was an intricate dance of adaptation, responding to challenges and proving that he'd learned to synthesize his father's wisdom with radical ideas for growth. Yet uncertainty gnawed obsessively. The fear of failure resided snugly beside burgeoning excitement. "Have you ever worked hands-on with a project like this?" Thompson queried, prying deeper into the conversation. The image of his father welding, of listening to murmured wisdom while sanding rough edges, nestled into Dave's thoughts. He had the hands-on experience, but did he have the courage to confront the doubts overshadowing that skill set? "Of course," he exclaimed, assembling his voice into a confident armor. "I spent countless summers in a workshop. The experience wasn't just about making things. It was about the stories behind each project. If I can bring that same narrative to a broader audience, feeding the modern desire for the authentic." "I'm intrigued," Thompson interrupted, raising a brow. "Intrigued but skeptical. What will you do next?" Suddenly, fear and determination weaved together in his chest, a palpable urge to rise in this defining moment, to harness every lesson he'd learned from setbacks and heartaches. "I'll prepare a detailed plan," he declared, immense focus sculpting the urgency in his voice. I'll show us both." Dave knew now that he was not, and could not, become a passive dreamer any longer. It was time to morph his vision into a robust foundation on which to build undeniably. Walking out from that meeting, heart racing and simmering anticipation sparking in his veins, he realized that the next steps ahead were not merely about the workshop itself, but a challenge of identity. Could he evolve not just as a businessperson but as someone capable of embracing risk without losing his core? Would he find that elusive balance? Or would the pressure ultimately reshape him into something unrecognizable? As he keyed on the elevator button, he felt it, the profounding determination. The true test lay ahead. Would he succeed in reflecting the essence of his father's legacy while carving his path? Or would he slip into the echo of forgotten dreams? The next chapter demanded more than a mere business plan. It required courage and clarity, a potent combination he hadn't yet fully unearthed. What lay in wait beyond the mechanical doors of opportunity? How would he confront the ultimate challenge of merging past influences with the pulse of future ambitions? Dave stepped into the world outside the office building, a wave of fresh air invigorating him after the stifling atmosphere of the meeting. As cool gusts whipped through the bustling street, he navigated his thoughts around Thompson's piercing questions, each resounding in his head. Risk, community, authenticity. No longer could he defer to distant hopes. He had to act with calculated intention. The hum of the city provided an urgent backdrop as he pulled out his phone, fingers trembling slightly as they found the Notes app. He began formulating a plan, paragraphs forming like blockades against uncertainty. Each point he wrote required a deeper dive. Strategies to engage potential participants, collaborations that could drive passion into productivity, and, crucially, metrics to measure success. The reality of entrepreneurship demanded not only inspiration but also the science of dialogue. His aim was clear. He wanted to instill pride in the workshop's offerings, creating something not just for profit but for impact. The voices of the artisans he had known, their tales twisted into wood and metal, echoed in his head, urging him to keep their legacy fresh and relevant. He exhaled sharply, shaking off self-doubt. He had the experience from his youth. He had the spark of creativity from the depths of his heart. That evening became a furious flurry of activity. Dave spread out old sketches, photos, and notes he'd accumulated over the years, analyzing and reworking them into something solid, almost tangible. Amid this whirlwind, he had a revelation. What if he chose not merely to showcase craftsmanship, but to celebrate the artisans themselves? Highlighting their stories might just sway even the most cynical investor. This was his opportunity to bridge the gap between nostalgia and genuine innovation, a chance to redefine what a workshop could embody. He staggered into the night, feeling electrified by the ideas flowing through him. Clarity washed over the early shadows as he visualized using social media to highlight artisans' journeys, crafting engaging content that would narrate the human touch behind each creation. The connection formed in authenticity could attract not only funding but a community of supporters eager to engage with roots steeped in heritage. As he paced in the moonlight, he couldn't help but question if he was capable of following through on these ambitions. What if he pitched this to Thompson and still fell flat? What if others saw through the enthusiasm and deemed it naive? But these worries fueled his resolve. He refused to give in to fear and instead focused on solutions. The next few days dissolved into a blur of research, calls, and meetings, some with bills left unpaid, some with empty promises. Dave would often find himself tucked away in coffee shops, sketching ideas while dodging self-imposed distractions. Each fleeting victory was like a thread he would weave into the larger fabric of his project. Finally, with the meeting date approaching, his mind felt like a tightly coiled spring, emotions dancing between nervousness and fierce determination. He gathered feedback from a trusted friend, who marveled at his dedication but urged him to hone his central message further. What is your unique offering? Make them remember why they chose you over the rest. Hours before the meeting, Dave stared at his reflection, a reminder that inside uncertainty lurked the potential for greatness. Would he be able to articulate the convergence of his life's lessons and his entrepreneurial ambitions? With a deep breath, he gathered his final notes and clutched them tightly, a shield against doubt, a catalyst for confidence. As he stepped through the doors, a bittersweet anticipation tightened around his chest. Only now did he recognize that the challenge was more than a pitch. It was the confrontation of his own doubts. The moment of truth was dawning. Could he truly transform a nostalgic dream into a viable reality? Determined not to let this moment slip through his fingers, Dave felt something shift within him. It was more than just the desire to succeed. It was the raw power of self-belief igniting the air around him, illuminating a journey of personal evolution that was just beginning. What awaited him in the meeting was more than a mere discussion of funding. It was the perfect storm of possibility, and he had to be prepared to face it head-on. Would he rise to the challenge, or meet with unexpected resistance that may redefine his path forward? Dave's heart raced as he took his seat at the polished, sleek boardroom table, the sunlight cascading through the floor-to-ceiling windows illuminating the room with a stark vibrancy. The moment seemed surreal. He had dreamt of this space, filled with influential minds and formidable decisions, and yet now he was laced with doubt. The room filled with murmurs as people settled in, but Dave's focus narrowed onto Thompson, whose presence loomed large. The man's steely gaze was both familiar and intimidating. It was his skepticism that ignited Dave's internal fire. Before he could second-guess himself, he flipped open his notes, his roadmap to navigate this daunting conversation. "Thank you all for being here today," Thompson began, his voice calm yet commanding. "I look forward to hearing what you've prepared." "Dave." "Thank you, Thompson," Dave replied, feeling the pressure of the moment. He cleared his throat, mentally priming himself to push past the fear. Today, I'm not just presenting a business project. I'm sharing a vision that honors the artisans and their craft while creating a sustainable ecosystem for future generations. The slight nod from Thompson ignited a spark within Dave, and he continued, weaving through his plan. He emphasized the impactful stories of the artisans, each narrative a thread in a tapestry. He conveyed the importance of authenticity not merely as a marketing angle but as the very foundation of his initiative. Dave noticed fleeting expressions in the room, some intrigued, others skeptical. As he laid out his social media strategy, leveraging platforms to amplify artisans' voices and narratives, he caught a glimpse of the other board members shifting in their chairs. A young woman in the back appeared particularly engaged, jotting down notes fervently. This small detail calmed his mind, reminding him that genuine connections were being forged even if it was just for a moment. However, as he moved into the financial projections, the atmosphere shifted. Thompson's brow furrowed, and he posed his first challenge, cutting sharply through Dave's momentum. "You proposed a lot of engagement, Dave," he said. "But where's the evidence that this approach will yield actual profit? What are your fallback plans if community interest doesn't translate into sales?" A wave of uncertainty washed over Dave. This was a critical moment where he had to pivot or falter. He remembered his friend's words, what was his unique offering? He took a breath, recalling why he started this journey. It wasn't solely for profit. It was about creating an impact. Instead of getting defensive, he embraced the challenge. "I recognize that risk is inevitable," he answered, his voice steady. "However, I believe that true engagement fosters loyalty, and loyalty drives revenue. My fallback plan revolves around adapting to feedback and evolving our model. We are not just selling products. We are creating a brand that resonates emotionally with our audience." The room fell into contemplative silence. With each breath, he sensed he was inching closer to igniting a spark of belief, not just in his project but in himself. As he finished his presentation, he sensed a palpable shift in energy, a murmur of curiosity and a budding respect. Thompson leaned closer, intrigued. "That's a compelling take. But how will you measure this emotional impact?" "Through targeted surveys and engagement metrics on social media," Dave replied, recalling the data he had gathered from his research. "But I understand that numbers alone do not tell the whole story. We also need the narratives behind those numbers." The conversation unraveled into an exchange of ideas, a dialogue rather than a mere pitch. Dave felt himself thriving as they delved deeper into brainstorming solutions, each idea bouncing off others like lightning. As the meeting concluded, a buoyant sense of possibility washed over him. This was more than just an opportunity for funding. It was a crucible that would shape his professional identity. Feeling lighter than he had in days, Dave stepped out of the boardroom into the warmer air outside. But with this fleeting triumph came a rising tide of questions. Would Thompson's support materialize? Did he convince them? Uncertainty buzzed at the edges of his success, a reminder that this was only the beginning. The weight of the next steps loomed larger than before. Was he prepared to navigate the complexities that lay ahead, shifting from a dreamer to a doer? The path to his enlightenment unveiled before him, a landscape fraught with challenge. The real test of his resolve awaited. What if the very authenticity he sought to preserve stirred interests he had not anticipated? With newfound energy stirring in him, he knew it was not the end, merely another chapter unfolding. How would he define success when faced with real-world complexities? Dave's stride was more purposeful as he navigated the bustling streets, an adrenaline-fueled haze pulling him through the concrete labyrinth. Each step reverberated with both relief and trepidation, different facets of his journey entwined in an intricate dance. The boardroom seemed a world away, yet the echo of Thompson's piercing questions lingered in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that the conversation had shifted something within him. Was he ready for the realities of entrepreneurship? The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that mirrored his internal conflict. Once home, the weight of his ambitions pressed down on him. He needed a plan, tangible goals that went beyond the lofty ideals he had shared in the meeting. Even as the excitement of a newfound direction coursed through him, he felt the anxiety pool in his stomach. Success isn't just about the grand gestures, he reminded himself, pulling out a whiteboard and markers. He sketched a roadmap, each point a milestone that would require effort, agility, and recalibration. At the center of this map was the artisan community he aimed to uplift. With each step laid out in front of him, a fervor began to blend with clarity. This venture could forge his identity, not only as an entrepreneur, but as an advocate for cultural preservation. Yet as he started to break down his goals, a nagging voice in his head whispered doubts. Were the artisans truly ready to step into such a partnership? Or had he underestimated the complexities they faced? What if their stories, which he sought to amplify, were too tangled in roots of fear and tradition? It wasn't just about the enthusiasm of a pitch. It was about creating genuine relationships built on trust and support. In that moment, clarity struck. He had to immerse himself deeper with the artisans. It was time for first-hand experience, to sit among them and listen to their struggles and aspirations. If he wanted to champion their narratives authentically, he needed to know them not just as clients but as collaborators. This would not only bolster the values he aspired to promote, but also reveal any blind spots in his approach. That evening, Dave reached out to several artisans he had previously met, inviting them to a casual gathering. No sales pitches, just honest conversation over coffee. As he drafted messages, a sense of urgency ignited within him. This would mark a departure from simply planning to doing a rocky leap towards understanding the heart of his business. He attended to every detail of the gathering, ensuring that the atmosphere felt warm and inviting. But as the hour approached, a rush of apprehension set in. What if they didn't trust him? What if he was just perceived as another opportunist trying to exploit their craft? As he prepared the space, memories of his presentation flashed before him. He thought of the young woman from the boardroom, her keen interest like a beacon in a sea of skepticism. Was he brave enough to provide the same trust that he sought to gain? The gathering room filled with laughter and chatter, and to his surprise, many artisans arrived, each bringing their vibrant stories with them. Yet even as discussions began, Dave felt the weight of expectations. Would his vulnerability in sharing his uncertainty resonate with them? Would they open up in the same way? Time passed quickly, and soon he found himself in deep discussions, absorbing every narrative like a sponge. Each story was a mix of pride and struggle, revealing the nuance behind their craft. As conversations flowed, threads of trust wove between him and the artisans. Just as he began to feel the warmth of connection solidifying, one voice broke through the clamor, a deeper tone carrying authority. But how will you ensure we benefit, Dave? It was someone he hadn't met before. The room fell silent as all eyes turned towards him, challenging him to articulate his vision and methodologies. Dave realized he had only scratched the surface. The intricate balance of their desires and his ambitions still hung in the air. Doubt crept back in, reminding him of the uphill battle ahead. But the challenge ignited his determination once more. This was a fight for mutual dignity and growth. The moment crystallized a truth he hadn't fully acknowledged. Success was not singular. It required a coalition of voices, like-minded in purpose yet diverse in experience. With the echoes of the boardroom still resonating within him, he realized there were no shortcuts in this journey. But as he engaged deeper, he couldn't shake the feeling that his voice had only begun to resonate. What other complexities waited in the wings? With the conversation reaching a critical juncture, Dave took a deep breath, poised to expand on his vision. This was more than a meeting, it was a defining moment of transformation, where his understanding and partnerships were about to be tested in ways he hadn't anticipated. Would he have the foresight to foster a connection that not only propelled them forward but also revealed an unseen side of himself? The air shifted palpably as Dave felt the weight of the challenge hanging in the room. The voice that confronted him was firm yet laced with genuine curiosity, and it pierced through the convivial atmosphere like a sudden gust of wind. He had come to this gathering with an open heart, yet here he stood on the precipice of potential failure, grappling with the implications of accountability. Why would we trust you? The question resonated, echoing his own internal doubts. Trust was a currency he had yet to earn, and the authenticity of his mission was poised to be tested. "Because I'm committed to understanding," he replied, the urgency in his voice surprising even himself. "Understanding what you need, and ensuring that together, we create something beneficial for all of us." But even as the words left his mouth, he questioned their effectiveness. Could he convey sincerity without the armor of corporate jargon? As the conversation unfolded, Dave navigated the delicate balance of vulnerability and authority. He shared his own uncertainties, the fear of failing those who depended on his ambition. Vulnerability struck a chord. Some artisans nodded, revealing flickers of empathy. Yet that glimmer of connection was overshadowed by apprehension. He had not expected such direct scrutiny, and it prompted a reevaluation of his approach. Was he merely a freelancer with a passion, or had he nuanced his vision to be their advocate? "Actions speak louder than words," one artisan remarked, her eyes sharp and discerning. "We've seen too many come and go, promising the world but leaving us to gather the pieces." The challenge was an arrow aimed at his core, made even sharper by the recognition of his naivety. Dave felt perspiration beating at his temples, and in that moment, he made a pivotal choice. He leaned into the discomfort rather than retreat from it. "Then let me prove it to you," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm not here to offer empty promises. I'm here to listen and learn, but most importantly, to work alongside you to make this a reality." One of the artisans, a man with hands calloused from years of craft, broke the silence. "What will that look like?" "Partnerships, we've had enough of talk. The outcome is what matters." The room was undoubtedly charged with skepticism, but Dave felt a flicker of resolve igniting within him. He realized this was a crucial inflection point in his journey. This was not just about strategizing plans or painting grand visions. This was about action, tangible, measurable commitments that would forge unity rather than impose authority. He outlined a framework that could accommodate feedback, adjustments, and collective gains. He proposed the idea of collaborative projects, where artisans would share both their techniques and stories, so they could all contribute equally to the commercialization of their crafts. Imagine hosting workshops that not only showcase your skills but also bring in new eyes and revenue, he suggested, his energy shifting from uncertainty to enthusiasm. The discussion morphed into a brainstorming session, transforming the initial tension into something more constructive. Ideas flowed and, for the first time, voices blended harmoniously, each adding depth to the vision. As they collaboratively sculpted their narrative, Dave felt the camaraderie growing, bolstered by genuine investment in one another's pursuits. Yet the specter of uncertainty lingered. In the midst of shifting dynamics, a question loomed over his newfound proposition. Was he truly equipped to lead a movement rooted in collaboration? Did he have enough understanding of their crafts to navigate this complex labyrinth? As laughter replaced earlier skepticism, Dave realized he was at once a student and a teacher. He had taken a significant stride forward, yet felt the immensity of what still lay ahead. With each connection he nurtured, the line between architect and advocate began to blur. What legacy would he build, and would it honor the essence of those he sought to uplift? But just as possibilities swirled in his mind, one artisan raised a cautionary finger. "What if we agree but you falter? What happens when the weight of expectation becomes too heavy?" As the laughter faded into contemplative silence, Dave felt the fear of that reality. As he prepared to give his response, his heart raced. He was approaching a critical threshold. The stakes were confirmed, and now, the real journey was about to reveal itself. Would he rise to meet it, or stumble as so many others had? The next words he spoke could shift everything in this precarious alliance. With the room hanging on his every word, Dave understood that this was not just about addressing the concerns of the artisans. It was about embodying a pledge of unity and unwavering support. He drew in a breath, feeling the tension of both anticipation and responsibility unfurl within him. "If I falter," he began, maintaining eye contact with the artisan who had voiced the caution, "then I will be accountable to each of you. We will create a process of transparency and communication. Regular check-ins, feedback sessions, and a shared platform for ideas. This isn't merely my journey. It's ours. Your voices are essential, and I will never impose my vision without your consent. We're building this together. A sense of resolve flooded him as he spoke, a clarity emerging from the depths of uncertainty. Dave felt as if he were reclaiming the values his father had instilled in him. The importance of collaboration, the need for integrity, and the strength found in shared purpose. From the back of the room, the voice of the skeptical artisan softened. Trust doesn't come easy, but I see the determination in your eyes, Dave. Just remember, respect must accompany every collaboration. Our identities are wrapped in our crafts. It isn't a commodity for us. Dave nodded, absorbing the weight of this statement. He elicited agreement by reaffirming, I understand that completely, and I respect the vast histories and stories behind your work. This isn't about marketing. It's about preserving legacy and craftsmanship. Together, we can make it something that resonates beyond economics. With that, a ripple of agreement began to spread through the gathering. It was powerful to witness the cohesion forming before him. Their stories began to intertwine more closely, each artisan sharing thoughts, viewpoints, and visions, articulating what mattered most to them. As connections solidified, Dave took the opportunity to gather suggestions about the first steps they could take together. Ideas flowed freely, and with enthusiasm radiant across the room, a collaborative spirit emerged. Discussions sprang up around small showcase events where artisans could display their works, inviting the community to explore not just products, but the passion and soul sewn into each piece. By the end of the evening, they had mapped out an initial strategy. Plans had taken shape beyond his expectations, becoming a rich tapestry interwoven with the artisan's genuine stories and talents. When he gathered his belongings and stepped outside, Dave felt the weight of his worries lifting. Instead of facing the uncertainty of failure, he discovered an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. They had transformed potential hostility into trust, and his vision into a solid plan. Grateful, he pulled out his phone to document these developments, casting a glance back at the dimly lit workshop where laughter and connection thrived. He recognized that he hadn't simply pitched an idea. He had taken a monumental step in his personal evolution. Days turned into weeks as they met regularly, each workshop gathering building upon the last. Dave became a conduit of conversation between the artisans and the wider community. As partnerships solidified and small exhibitions launched, he marveled at how far their collective journey had come, each craft telling stories that drew the community closer through authenticity. But the real victory lay no longer in achieving external recognition. He found profound value within the personal connections he forged alongside the artisans. Every obstacle transformed into an opportunity for resilience. Trust blossomed, and with each setback, they regrouped and adapted, fostering an environment where creativity flourished without fear. One fateful afternoon, a local business approached them with an intriguing proposal: to feature the artisans in their storefront, weaving their narratives into a shop that celebrated craftsmanship and community. As they forged ahead, it marked not merely growth in business but profound personal achievement. Dave stood in the now bustling space, each artisan's craftsmanship displayed proudly. The faces of the people he served, of those he once feared would not embrace him, now radiated fulfillment. They had built something remarkable together, a vibrant embodiment of all they had aimed to achieve. In the warm glow of the afternoon sun, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction wrap around him, an unshakable confidence standing strong. He no longer saw himself merely as the stubborn mechanic he had once been. Instead, he was Dave Redding, an intermediary for stories and craftsmanship, channeling a legacy that honored both his father and the artisans at the heart of this transformation. This was personal achievement resounding loudly. He had cultivated not just a workshop but a dynamic community rooted in mutual respect and collaboration. Dave smiled at the view around him as he prepared to step back into the world, understanding clearly that his journey, one of profound growth, still lay ahead. But now, he faced it emboldened, a testament to vision, resilience, and community, with the unshakable belief that he could navigate whatever complexities awaited him. The adventure of growth was far from over. Now is the moment you've been waiting for. If you found this story inspiring, you need to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can shape your journey. Don't wait even one more second. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for stories of personal overcoming. We want to hear from you. Comment below your thoughts and theories about this conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion. Let us spread the message that change is possible.